What is up? It is Monday, still fun day. Welcome on into Let's Bet It. Lauren Jabbar here with Mark Zinno, presented by Superbook Sports. Zinno, what's up? How are you? Happy Monday.
Not as good as you. I had a very profitable weekend, but I still would not put it up against the weekend that one Michigander, Lauren Jabara,
Yeah.
had for the Saturday that was at the Horseshoe. May as well have been the Big House the way they played that game. Dear Lord, they got
Yeah, let's
mollywopped.
freaking go. That was awesome. That was so stinking awesome. I wore all blue to the Atlanta Hawks game last
Yep,
night. Got a lot
there
of
you
cheers.
go.
And then
Uh-huh.
also on the flight that we flew out after the game, we're in Philly now. I
Mhm.
changed into like this Michigan t-shirt, got a lot of high fives on it. Feeling pretty good about that Michigan win, but I'll feel better after next week, the Big Ten Championship, and knowing for sure that the Wolverines are in. There was a lot of winners and losers, on
Yeah.
Saturday, and then there was a lot of winners and a lot of losers yesterday. So how about we get right into it? Who was your biggest winner from week 12 of the NFL slate?
I mean, I have to pick Bengals. What a they had on the road at Tennessee. Look, I feel like I was on the right side of the game, just got the wrong result. If you
Yeah.
watch how it unfolded, nonetheless, you tip your cap to the Cincinnati Bengals because of the win. Lauren, like, here's what kind of went on the line. If they had lost that game, okay, they would end up being 6-5. But here's what happened with the win. One, most importantly, they tied the Ravens atop the AFC North for the division lead. Now, right now, the Ravens have the head-to-head tiebreaker, but they've only played one matchup with which the Ravens won. They also tied the Jets and the Tennessee Titans with the same exact record, now own the tiebreaker over
Hmm.
the Tennessee Titans. So if the Ravens end up faltering and the Bengals win the division, the Bengals have the tiebreaker over Tennessee. They're a game behind Miami and Buffalo. One of those two teams will end up being a wild card, and they could be within striking distance of them. Not only that, they just put themselves in prime position as far as the AFC playoff race is concerned. If they had lost that game, they would have fallen to the 8th seed. And it would have been a
Yeah.
major hurdle for them to climb, not only to win their division, but just to sort of squeeze into the playoffs with how deep the AFC is. So clearly a huge win for the Cincinnati Bengals, and they absolutely needed it. Congrats to them.
Yeah, no, to be honest with you, I actually think the Bengals are better this season than they were last year. And I feel like we're going to see that down the stretch run here. You look at their schedules, though, over the next 6 weeks, they are going
Yeah.
through a freaking gauntlet of a schedule over the next 6 weeks, which is crazy. So that's going to be a determining factor of, hey, is this team the real deal or are they not the real deal? Because I mean, you look at their schedule compared to others, it has to be one of the toughest down the stretch to finish out the season. For me, one of my biggest winners yesterday was Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars. I feel like every quarterback at a certain point has like that moment as an NFL quarterback, and that was his. This is why he was selected first overall, and he's kind of showing that in a game like this. It was a massive win over the Ravens, right? Their defense has been on fire over the last four games. Like the Ravens' defense has been on fire over the last 4 games, and Jacksonville was down a touchdown, 90 seconds left. They kept the drive alive on 4th and 5, game-winning touchdown drive, 81 yards, 6 completions. Zay Jones for the game winner. I feel like teams that are rebuilding and in that rebuilding phase need that signature comeback win to really show that they are, they're on the up and up. And not saying like this season they're going to be that team, but I feel like this is a win that shows that the positive regression starts here, right? Before this game, Trevor Lawrence had a 2 touchdown to 4 interception ratio and a 54% completion rate from playing from behind with less than 2 minutes. It shows he's maturing as a quarterback. He's maturing as a player. He's maturing as a leader for this team. And that was a really, really good win for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And now you talk about losers. Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. Did you see that tweet that he sent out? He tweeted out to someone that like gave him hate on Twitter. This is their fourth.
Apparently, he reads social media and responds, which is something that you kind of like never want to do
Yeah.
if you're an NFL
At a
quarterback.
certain
But
point.
I mean, remember, all this is in the context of him asking for like $250 million in free agency. So
Yeah.
that's what the backdrop of this is more than anything. I got to tell you, I mean, they were my loser too. The Ravens were. And in general, what a frustrating offense and team to watch. I thought it was a bad game against Carolina
Yeah.
last week. I'm like, bounce back. You know, John Harbaugh's the kind of coach that doesn't allow them to have 2 bad games in a row. They had to kick 4 field goals before they found the end zone in the fourth quarter. Like just nuts. I mean, it was unreal how much their offense sputtered. And Lamar Jackson is infuriating as a passer because some of his good throws are awesome, but the rest of his throws are
No
mostly just like a
consistency.
dumpster fire. Oh God, they are
Hmm.
awful. Like missing guys
Yeah.
who are wide open, like completely just off, and the knocks on him coming out of college about his accuracy. He hasn't got any better. He generally
Yeah.
hasn't. He makes great throws from time to time. Like you said, it's a consistency issue. Makes these great throws from time to time, but some of them are
Yeah.
just flat out garbage. Flat out
Yeah.
garbage.
Over the last 6 quarters, the Ravens have only scored one offensive touchdown. One. Count it. One. This
That's
is their fourth blown double-digit lead. Let me put that out there in the fourth quarter this season. I mean, we're 12 weeks in, and that's a quarter of the games, and they've blown a fourth quarter lead. They were up 9 to the Jags in the fourth quarter. Lamar Jackson tweeting back to a fan. I digress about that situation, but that the Ravens need to figure it out right now because their defense is, for the most part, doing the job, right? Like, especially after the
right.
trade deadline, they've been playing pretty well. It's their offense that needs to step up, and you can't rely. Yeah, Justin Tucker's amazing. You can't rely on him to make a 67-yard touchdown to win a game every single week, right?
Sure you
Like,
can.
and yeah, he's made a 66-yarder before, but that was inside. This is outside with wind, with the elements. Like, you can't expect your kicker. I mean, to be honest with you, that kick was perfect. It was literally just a yard and a half, 2 yards too short,
Yeah, it was.
right?
Listen, it was as close as you can get to making a record-setting field goal as you can. But you're right. You can't send him out there and expect him to make that kick. Although I do, because I may expect every kicker to make every single kick, because that's their sole purpose on this earth. But we won't go down that road, Lauren. So we'll just
Yeah.
acknowledge that Justin Tucker was so close.
And it wasn't like he missed it wide left, wide right. I mean, that thing was right down the
That
pipe.
was
It
down
was
the
just a
middle.
couple
Yeah,
yards
it's
too short. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of my other losers this week, and I don't want to touch on it too much, it's just the Denver Broncos. I mean, this team has Russell Wilson at quarterback. They assumed that, hey, we're going to get Russell Wilson. Now we're going to be a Super Bowl contender. They're averaging 14.3 points per game and 319 total yards per game, which is not great at all. Does that come down to Russell Wilson? Does that come down to Nathaniel Hackett not being the guy? Because at this point, I think he stopped calling plays in week 10 and kind of like passed that torch to someone else. He was hired to convince, I feel like at this point, Nathaniel Hackett was hired to convince Aaron Rodgers to want to trade at a certain point. It was literally it's like, this might be the worst first year coaching experience / hire I've ever seen. Do you not agree?
It's one of the worst coaching first years that we've seen ever. I mean, there's one
Ever.
thing, like there are coaches who go 1-15, or now would be 1-16, and it's like, oh God, it's awful. But it's the way that they're losing, the method and how they're losing, and what the level of talent is on that roster. Usually when those teams go 1-15, like they did in Cleveland or whatever, or Detroit, it's
Mm-hmm.
because they had bad rosters. It's not a bad roster in Denver. It's a very good roster. So that's a big, big deal as to why they're losing and why he's getting back, and he deserves it.
Yeah. Who is your biggest Week 12 overreaction team?
Miami Dolphins.
Why?
Look, I know they scored 30 points in 5 straight games, but there's this thing that odds makers use to assign a certain value to a team, and it's point differential. How many points do you score versus how many
Mm-hmm.
points do you give up? And if you look at the AFC East, the Miami Dolphins have a plus 26 point differential, and that's after a 15-point win. So coming into this week, they were plus 11. The Jets are plus 37 after a 15-point win, and the Patriots are plus 37. The Buffalo Bills are plus 110. Let's not forget who the
Wow.
best team in that division is. It's the Buffalo Bills, okay?
Yeah.
And even if Miami somehow ends up winning the AFC East, which I don't think they will, yeah. The Buffalo Bills are still the better team, and they have their sights set on something much bigger than Miami is chasing right now. I'm not taking anything away from Tua or even Mike McDaniel, who, oh, by the way, hey, note, Mike, stop benching your starters in the third quarter of an
Yes.
NFL game. This isn't college, okay? It's the NFL. You pull your starters with a drive left. Okay, that's how this goes. You don't ever take your foot off the gas pedal in the NFL, period. So he hasn't obviously been around long enough to watch leads get blown. But nonetheless, I think Miami is still a little bit overrated, particularly defensively. And yeah, that was in danger. Miami was in danger of not getting a cover yesterday, by the way. Like they almost
Yeah.
let Houston back for that thing, and that was very nerve-wracking for me.
Yeah, it actually is crazy. I feel like at this point of the season, right, we're a little bit more than 2/3 of the way through. We have 6 weeks left. A lot of trends are developing. A lot of trends have developed. We've seen a lot of things. And I feel like let's play 20 questions, but with 5 questions, right? 5 burning questions with 6 games left. Who to you has been the biggest disappointment this season? Because the top of my list have been the Raiders, even though they're coming off of back-to-back overtime wins, which is incredible for them, probably great for the locker room as well, and the Broncos. But I want to get your take on who you think the biggest disappointment is through 12 weeks this season.
You're looking at the wrong team in the AFC West. It's the Chargers. That is the best
Ooh.
roster in that division, with probably the most talented quarterback in the league currently. And that's not exaggeration or hyperbole. Justin Herbert may be more talented than Patrick Mahomes, and certainly
Wow.
is a better Rodgers at this point in his career. Now, Patrick Mahomes is a better quarterback, but from a pure talent standpoint, Herbert is just insanely off the charts good. That is a roster that is loaded, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Like, the Chiefs don't have the Chargers defense, not talent-wise.
Yeah.
And once again, the Chargers just find a way to be mediocre, because that's what Chargers do. They mediocre and whatever. But again, I don't think by any stretch of the imagination that the Chargers are going to get into the playoffs because they don't have enough good wins. And again, they had to sneak out a win yesterday against a stinky Cardinals team, for crying out loud. So
Yeah.
I put the Chargers at the top of the disappointment list.
Let's talk about the NFC for a second, because at this point, who do you think is going to make it out of the NFC in terms of the top 7 teams? Who do you think is going to finish one, first of all? And then who do you think is going to be playing in those wild card games?
I
Or
mean,
who, I guess the better question is who misses out that we think that might make it into the NFC?
I think the Giants actually might miss out.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, the problem is there's no nipping at their heels right now. I mean, they
Mm-hmm.
theoretically have a 1-game lead over Seattle, who just lost again this week, and I think Seattle's going to peel back a little bit. But they have a 2 or 3-game lead over everybody else. So that said, the Giants, we talked about point differential a moment ago, Lauren. Their point differential
Mm-hmm.
-7. They've given up more points than they've scored. And that's a bad place to be at this point in the season. Even if you are over 500, you're going to start to get exposed the last 5 weeks of the year. And as much as I'd love to see them do it, first thing is Giants have an 0-2 division record. That's a problem, because the other 3 teams in your division are very good. So at
Mm-hmm.
some point, you're going to have to start to win a divisional game. And they're going to get a chance here in a couple of weeks against playing the Commanders 2 times in 3 weeks. But starting this weekend, as a matter of fact, if the Giants lose this game to the Commanders, there's a good chance they don't make the playoffs.
Also, who are the Commanders right now? 6 wins over the last 7 weeks. And it's
They're a
not
great
Taylor Heineke, but apparently they're playing for Taylor Heineke more so than they were for Carson Wentz. But it is the run game and the defense that have really stepped up to get them those wins. Do they make the
They're,
playoffs?
yes. I mean, look, if they keep playing the way they do and Ron Rivera doesn't bleep this thing up, because I think he absolutely has a propensity to do that. Some bad coaching he did yesterday. Kind of got lucky in certain ways when you look at that
Yeah.
game. But that defense is it's insanely good. And conditions aside, yesterday was kind of sloppy and wet, and it just wasn't really, an ideal thing. But Heineke is good enough to not make mistakes. Heineke is good
Hmm.
enough to make a play when his team needs it. He did it yesterday. Made a couple of really good throws. And when you put those two together, they could be tough to beat, especially at home. Look, if they could beat Philadelphia, and they beat them in
Yeah.
Philadelphia correctly, um, they have a chance to stick with anybody in this league. So they run the
Hmm.
ball really well. They have a ton of offensive talent. They have 2 really good running backs. They have 3 solid wide receivers. Your quarterback doesn't have to be spectacular when you're surrounding him with that much good stuff.
Hmm. What about the AFC? We talked about the Chargers. The Chargers charging the season. They're your biggest disappointment team of the season with the roster they have. They also have been dealing with a lot of injuries all season long.
Yeah.
It's like Justin Herbert hasn't really had many guys to throw to because Keenan Allen cannot stay healthy to save his life, as well as a few of his other receivers. Do they make the postseason in the AFC?
The Chargers probably not. Again, they're a game behind the Jets for the final what would be playoff spot right now. The Patriots still stand in their way. The
Yeah.
problem is, here's the one benefit for the Chargers. The Patriots and the Jets are going to cannibalize each other. They're going to knock each other out at some point, right? Like, the chances of them both getting in, I think, are pretty slim.
Hmm.
And unfortunately for Chargers, they don't have a game against either one of those teams, so they're waiting on help from everybody else. All the Chargers can do is go out and win the rest of their games. And oh, by the way, outside of a game where they host the Dolphins, they have a very favorable schedule. Raiders, Dolphins, Titans, Colts, Rams, Broncos. I know the Titans have a
Yeah.
great defense, but they get the Titans at home, and it's one of those deals where their offense is good enough to work their way around the Titans defense. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting for the Chargers, but I don't think they get in. If they do, they're going to sneak in. They're probably going to back their way in the very last playoff spot.
You mentioned the Jets. Right now, they're sitting at 7-4 after their win this past week. Mr. White, Magic White, making things happen out there. Is Zach Wilson a New York Jet next season? Because I look at the guys that are going to be free agents. Jimmy G, Derek Carr, Ryan Tannehill. Would any of them be options for the Jets, or is Zach Wilson the face of the franchise?
It's not a question of whether he's a face of the franchise. They're not going to dump a quarterback like him on a rookie salary at this point in time, right? At a minimum, you can keep him as a backup and you're fine. There's no reason not to. Clearly, they believe that he could play. Clearly, they believe that he had the talent to be their starting quarterback. Otherwise, they wouldn't have drafted him at number 2 overall.
Yeah.
But at this point in time, it's diminishing returns with him. So they had to make a switch because they were winning games and had a chance to get to the postseason. Like, it's one of those things where just the situation calls for them to try and shake things up to continue to get W's. Do I think Zach Wilson would have beat the Bears yesterday? Yes, I do, because the Bears are banged up and no Justin Fields, and they're bad on the road and all those things. And the Jets defense would have swallowed. Now, would it have been a 31-15 kind of game? Probably not. No. Might have been a little bit closer than that. All things considered, I think that's still a W for the Jets, but they just feel like Mike White is the guy they need to go to now. Wilson's still going to be on the roster next year.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But the Jets could possibly make the postseason as a wild card this year. What team do you think could be the most dangerous wild card coming out of the AFC and NFC?
I mean, I'm always going to look to a team with defense. So the Jets should scare some people because defense in the playoffs ends up working out. And along with Washington and Dallas. I mean, here's the thing with the Dallas Cowboys. I genuinely believe that they can catch the Eagles and win this division. They still have a matchup left with the Eagles on Christmas Eve. And in the interim, the Eagles still have a couple of tough tests along the way, including a bunch of divisional games. And we just talked about it. Divisional games, you can always lose them. It doesn't matter what the other team in your division.
Yeah.
They get the Titans, and then they have to go to the Giants and then to Chicago before that matchup with the Cowboys. Could they lose to the Titans or the Giants? Possibly. And if they do, the Cowboys can beat them straight up and then have a chance to win the division. So I won't exactly crown the Eagles as a number 1 overall seed yet, but the Cowboys defense just keeps getting better and better each week.
Yeah, I love watching the Cowboys play right now, and I love watching Micah Parsons. He is that dude at this point of the season. 6 weeks left, but we have one more game to put a bow, tie it up. Almost Christmas time on week 12. We have the Steelers taking on the Colts. For more on that, let's bring in Bobby Stanley, Prop Holiday, to give us some of those props, those side dishes that we have for our Steelers Colts Monday Night Football game. Bobby, how are you? Happy Monday.
I'm good. Happy Monday, guys. How's everybody doing?
Good. We're just hanging out, Yeah. Both of these teams really, really need victories this week. The Steelers dropped last week to the Bengals. They only led for 3 minutes and 57 seconds of that game. The Colts, they were on their way to a Week 11 win. They blew a fourth quarter lead to the Eagles and lost by 1 point. But this Monday Night Football is a showdown between two of the worst offenses in the NFL, and that's why the total is set so low. But you're giving us something to be excited about with some of these props. Give me your number 1 prop pick for today or tonight.
Number 1 prop pick for tonight. I'm on Deontay Johnson, wide receiver for the Steelers, under 46.5 receiving yards. It's a tough matchup. It's a tough matchup for him with this Colts defense. They're top 10 in coverage. They're top 10 in tackling according to PFF. Top 3 in yards per reception. First in wide receiver yards per game. So it's not a great matchup for Johnson. And he's also kind of just fallen off this season. And I think part of that has to do with Ryan Pickett stepping under center. He's only hit this line in 2 of 6 games with Pickett as a starter. And those explosive plays that we saw from him last season, he only has 3 receptions this year of 20 yards or more. So he's not picking up yards in big chunks. And a majority of his targets are between 0 and 9 yards. He's not getting the ball down the field. So I'm fading Deontay Johnson tonight under 46.5 receiving yards.
Bobby, one of the guys that you are looking at for Pittsburgh is a tight end, usually a young quarterback's best friend, Pat Fryermuth. You're going over his 43.5. Why?
Well, Where Deontay Johnson dropped the ball, Pat Freiermuth picked it up. He seems to be one of the top targets for Pickett while he's under center. 4 straight games of 7+ targets, so he's getting up there. And you don't think about him yet when you talk about the top tight ends in the league, but some of these advanced stats, he's up there with. All right, his ADOT, average depth of target. He's third only behind Kyle Pitts and Mark Andrews. He's getting these receptions in big chunks. 6 of 9 games this season, he has a 20-yard reception. So he has the ability to take half this line out of the total in one reception. And then we look at the Colts DVOA, 27th overall against tight end. So he actually gets a little bit favorable matchup where Deontay Johnson may struggle. I saw this line as high as 46.5, but I grabbed it at 43.5, and I think it's good value.
And you always give us your long shot touchdown prop plus 330 today. Tell us more.
I wish I had more touchdown props for last night's game, but sadly, I don't think we're going to get the same repeat tonight with the Colts and the Steelers. But I do like Alec Pierce, rookie wide receiver of the Colts at plus 330. He's second on the team in red zone targets. He has 7 on the season. Steelers are giving up a league worst 14 touchdowns to opposing wide receivers. So it is a good matchup in that regard. And then cornerback, Akella Witherspoon for the Steelers. He's going to be out tonight. You're going to see some mixing up of that Steelers secondary. And then just the eye test. I've watched a fair amount of Colts games this season. Not sure why, but they're on TV, so I check them out. He finds a way of getting open. He finds a way of getting open in the red zone. I remember week 1, he dropped a wide open touchdown pass. We're 12 weeks later. Matt Ryan is back under center, which speaks well for him. So give me this guy at plus 330 to score a touchdown. It's worth throwing in your same game parlay.
All right, Bobby, let's look at the game. Rest of the game itself here. Steelers at Colts. Colts laying 2.5 and a total 39.5. Over a 6-2 in the last 8 meetings. The under is 4-1 on the last 5 in Indy. The Steelers are 5-1 over their last 6 against the number, and the home team 6-1 over their last 7 in the meetings between these two teams. I like the Steelers, so I am hoping that the Colts offense is as stagnant as it's been for a better part of this year. Steelers defense getting better and healthier. TJ Watt back. How do you see the game?
Yeah. I kind of see it the same way as you, man. I would have loved to get this line at 3. It's at 2.5. I see the coaching disparity here from Tomlin over to Jeff Saturday. Yes, Jeff Saturday, he fared well against a McDaniels. He fared well last week against Sirianni. But Mike Tomlin, probably the second most seasoned head coach to Bill Belichick in the league. I do see that playing a factor. If you can buy the half a point, I'd love to get it at 3. I do think the pressure gets to Matt Ryan. We know how he can turn over the ball if TJ Watt is getting downfield on him. So give me the Steelers. Najee Harris has played exceptionally well over these last 2 weeks. So if they can control the clock, run the ball fairly well, I do think it could be a win for the Steelers. Get that half a point. Get it to 3.
That total is set at a whopping 39.5. I feel like this is not the days of the matchups we used to see between the Steelers and the Colts and Ben Roethlisberger and Peyton Manning, right? We got different guys. We got Matt Ryan and we have what's his face? Kenny Pickett. Sorry, blanking out on my quarterbacks. Tiny Hands Pickett, yeah. Bobby, we so appreciate you coming on. Thank you for giving us your Monday Night Football picks. Jeff Saturday, trying to conquer. He conquered Sunday already with the win. Now he's trying to conquer Monday with the win. Then they need to give him a Thursday Night Football game. Give the dude every day of the week, don't you think? Jeff Saturday, every day.
Well done.
Why not?
Well done.
Thanks so much for coming on. We'll talk to you Thursday.
Later, guys. Thank you.
Peace. We got the Steelers and the Colts, and I know, Zeno, we're both going to be hitting that hard for our play of the day. So we'll get back to that game in a little bit. Right now, let's take it to Saturday. Not Jeff Saturday, but college football Saturday, okay? Because the regular season is now done. We are on to the conference championship, and then it's time to go bowling. But crazy stuff went down this past weekend. USC got the win like they needed to, but we saw a bunch of other teams lose. Michigan got the win. Ohio State loses. LSU loses. Oregon loses. Like, there's so many different things that happened this week. Who at this point are your 4 college football playoff teams?
Well, I think you're going to find out, and the AP poll, I think, will mirror the college football playoff poll when it's all said and done. But, the simple fact here is that if TCU and USC went out, they're in. I don't think anybody's going to debate that or have any issue with that. And what the committee will tell you when they place Ohio State at number 5 and Alabama at number 6, that if either TCU or USC slips up, Alabama, Ohio State rather gets to sneak their way in. And if both TCU and USC slip up, Ohio State and Alabama get to go in. So I think that's where you are right now. Georgia and Michigan shouldn't have any problem winning their respective conference championship games. They will be in as undefeated conference champions. And the committee's job this year is really easy. And remember, nobody else outside the top four is playing a game this weekend, right? So everybody else below them, with the exception of a K-State or a Utah, they're not going to be in the conversation for anything, period. Clemson's loss knocked them out of the picture, even if they win the ACC title. So what it boils down to here is the top 6 teams, 5 and 6, got to hope that 3 and 4 get tripped up. I think it's really that simple this week for the committee.
Is Alabama at 40-1 worth a bet at this point before we see this conference championship being played out?
At 40-1, yeah, for a couple of shekels, why not? Because it's very possible that K-State, who held an 11-point lead at halftime over TCU, they could win that game. Granted, that game was in I think it was in Manhattan, Kansas. I got to forgetting off the top of my head where the game was. Regardless, it's neutral site. And oh, by the way, Utah beat USC already by a stinking point. So it's possible they could absolutely do it again. So both of these teams are sort of at danger here, regardless of what the numbers say and the spread says. I think these are sort of coin flip scenarios here. And in both these games, honestly, I feel like the team that holds the ball last is going to win. That's genuinely how I feel the games go down.
Yeah, especially some of these games between these two really, really incredible teams. I know we saw this game between USC and Notre Dame on Saturday, right? The game that everyone was waiting for. Ohio State is rooting for Notre Dame harder than they've ever rooted for Notre Dame in their entire life. They needed USC to win. But Caleb Williams came out and he had himself a game, a Heisman game, as a lot of people would like to call it. He even has a Heisman pose towards the end of that one. He went 18 of 22 for 232 yards, 81.8% completion rate, 1 passing touchdown, and he also had 3 rushing touchdowns to add on top of that on 9 carries, 35 yards. Was that his Heisman Trophy performance? Does Caleb Williams win the Heisman Trophy?
Yes, and I'll break my arm patting myself on the back on this very show, saying about 3 weeks ago that Caleb Williams, when he was sitting at plus 600 to 700, was a worthwhile bet, because if USC would run the table on the way out, and I think this was after their loss to Utah. I'm like, look, if USC still runs the table on this thing, they are in. And if they do that, it's because Caleb Williams is having a phenomenal year, and he's closing it out against 3 ranked opponents in order to get there with performances for the ages. So, yeah, he has overtaken C.J. Stroud, rightfully so. C.J. did not have a good game on Saturday. He wasn't terrible, but he certainly wasn't as good as Caleb Williams was. And for a guy this year who started as a dark horse candidate on the outside and was sitting behind the Stetson Bennett's of the world and the I'm old enough to remember when Anthony Richardson was the second favorite for the Heisman. I mean, what kind of lunacy was that?
What was that, like week 6, week 5?
No,
when was that? That was early in the season.
It was after they beat Utah in week 1. We had a little slight overreaction there. So anyway, Caleb Williams, a long shot's going to end up winning this thing.
Yeah, good for him. And he does the Heisman pose. He was asked about it after the game. He said, my teammates told me to do it. I'm sure, Caleb. I'm sure that's what it was, for sure. All right, we're going to get more into Monday Night Football, but first, let's talk about Let's Bet It, presented by Superbook Sports. Pile up the wins, my friend, and pile up the money with Superbook. Right now, the best betting app from Las Vegas, giving you free money every single week you make a bet. Just place a $50 bet each week with Superbook, and they'll give you a $50 bonus up to $50 for betting each week afterwards. So if you're in Arizona, Colorado, Iowa, Nevada, New Jersey, or Tennessee, download the Superbook Sports app or visit superbook.com to get your streak started today. From superbook.com, then on to Pickswise.com. I'm sure we have a couple 3-star plays of the day on the site. Who do we got today?
We do. We do have 3
my friend.
3-star plays on the day.
Ooh.
We have an NHL pick, an NBA one, and even a World Cup pick. So there is that.
We got some American football and we got some European football. World Cup. Make sure to check it out on Pickswise.com. Let's take it from European football to American football. Boom. Monday Night Football to wrap up Week 12. Steelers taking on the Colts. Who you got?
I am going to take the points with the Pittsburgh Steelers here. As their defense continues to get better. You heard Bobby Holliday tell us earlier, Najee Harris is starting to come on fire and be what we thought he was going to be all season long. If you look at the Steelers' last 6 games, they're just 2-4. But their 4 losses were to a high-powered Bills offense, a high-powered Dolphins offense, a high-powered Eagles offense, and a high-powered Bengals offense. Let me check my notes real quick. Colts, not a high-powered offense. So from that standpoint, the Pittsburgh Steelers defense should do more than enough, much similar to they did when they beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and they beat the New Orleans Saints, to shut down a very mediocre offense. The one thing the Colts do well, run the football. The Steelers are pretty good at stopping that. Give me Pittsburgh plus the 2.5 tonight on Monday Night Football. A little sprinkle on the money line.
Sprinkle it on there. I'm looking at the total, and I know it's one of the lowest totals of the week. It's set at 39.5 right now. This is not the days of the matchups between Ben Roethlisberger and Peyton Manning. We have Kenny Pickett taking on Matt Ryan, which, by the way, this has to be maybe one of the largest age gaps of quarterbacks going against you. There's like 20 years of difference between the two of the guys. 37 and what? How old is Kenny Pickett? He's like 20, 21? I don't know. But you're looking at a young guy going up against an old guy. This is a showing between two of the worst offenses in the NFL this season. And for that reason, I'm taking the under, even though it's as low as 39.5. They have good players, but the Steelers are only averaging 17 points per game, which is 28th in the league. Then guess what? You put them on the road, that drops to 13.2 points per game, which is second worst in the league. Then you look at the Indianapolis Colts. They're averaging 15.7 points per game, second to last in the league. At home, it does go up a little bit to 20.6 points per game. But if you add up that 13.2 and that 20.6, if my math is correct, that's only about 34 points, which ends up being 5.5 lower than what that total is set at right now. I feel like this could be a little bit of a good spot for the Colts to take advantage of the Steelers' bad secondary. Matt Ryan has completed almost 75% of his passes over the last 2 games, and the Steelers are giving up 272 passing yards per game. And most Steelers losses have come by an average of 12.9 points. I don't see that happening. This is going to be a close game. It's going to be a grinded out game. The under is going to hit, and it's hit in 6 of the last 7 Colts Steelers game at Lucas Oil Stadium. So give me the under 39.5. I'll take the under sweats today on a Monday to put a bow on Week 12 NFL. That's it for us today, guys. Find us on the Pickswise YouTube channel. Go to Pickswise.com. Follow us on Twitter. Mark Zinno, Lauren Javara. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Until then, let's get it. Let's spin it.